Okay, so hello and welcome. My name is Stacy Fonts. I'm a program director here at the University of Washington's Continuum College. At the Continuum College, we expand the reach of the University of Washington on a global scale by breaking down barriers to make education possible for all types of learners. Within our professional and continuing education division, we work hard to give professionals the educational experiences they need to thrive in our ever-changing world. In my work, I get to connect with amazing professionals across industries, all playing a role in the impact that we make in transforming the lives of our learners wherever they are in life and wherever they want to go. This is especially true of our two presenters today. Before we get started, I want to take a quick moment to thank everyone again for joining us and being a part of this ongoing Expert Insights series. In these free webinar series, we feature one of our expert instructors, or in this case, two, to share what's trending in their fields, tools, tips, anything that can be helpful as you develop in your career. We will have time for Q&A at the end of our presentation today. Please use the Q&A feature to submit your questions. I don't know exactly how much time we'll have because we have a lot of incredible content to get through, but we will do our very best to answer them all at the end. So, a quick little disclaimer. This presentation has been developed by Andy Tosh and Matthew Bennett and includes their experiences as editors and writers who use artificial intelligence, AI, as part of their professional practice. The views, opinions, and insights are their own. Content in this slide deck is not meant to answer every question about professional editing or writing, the use of AI, or serve as any form of legal advice or interpretation. UW Continuum College is committed to expanding the reach of the university by making educational impact again, by meeting the needs of learners wherever they are, which includes wherever they are in an AI world. Okay, so now it is my great pleasure to introduce both Andy Tosh and Matt Bennett. Andy is a full-time staff technical writer and editor at a large cloud-based software company. She has more than 15 years of experience crafting corporate communications and technical documentation for a variety of clients. Andy is a lifelong learner who's passionate about the accessibility and reach that online learning can afford to students. She is not only an instructor in the editing certificate, but a content developer and soon to be instructor of our newest course on business writing foundations. Everything Andy will be sharing today to get Everything Andy will be sharing today to get the most out of AI tools will be part of her course. We'll have a slide near the very end of the deck with more information should you be interested in joining her this spring and to advance your writing skills. And next we have Matthew Bennett. Matt is an educator, writer, editor, and researcher. He too has over 15 years of experience in editing and has co-founded Cascadia Editors Collective to provide developmental editing and artistic guidance for writers. As a freelance editor, he collaborates with writers on novels, memoirs, creative nonfiction, and academic books. Noticing a need for developmental editing skills, he developed our specialization in developmental editing to be able to provide learners with applied knowledge to advance their editorial careers. Not unlike Andy here, everything Matt will be sharing is also part of the expertise that he brings to his course. And again, at the end of the deck, we'll have more information about the specialization that he teaches. I consider both Andy and Matt, to be real-world superheroes. They are exceptional educators with a demonstrated passion and commitment to support student learning in our professional programming. Both have been awarded a Teaching Excellence Award for their work in the editing certificate. This excellence continues to carry forward. Before we get started with our topic on the next slide, I again wish to acknowledge their ongoing excellence, humility, and express my gratitude for their collegiality. I always look forward to learning from Andy and Matt, so I'm very excited to be able to share this learning opportunity with you, our guests, tonight. Okay, so without further ado, here we go for Matt.
All right. Thank you so much, Stacy. And I'm going to start out with some numbers here because they are quite staggering. And just to give a sort of reason for us all to be here, AI is new, it is very new, and it is very big. So you can see from the numbers here, we're talking about billions and trillions of dollars being affecting the market with AI. And so how is it affecting us though on the individual level as editors working with writers? Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. And so when we're talking about AI here, we are referring principally to large language models. And the major ones on the market right now, you might recognize the names, are ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, DeepSeek, which is new on the scene, Claude, and Notebook LM. We're primarily concerned as editors with four major functions, and I've color coded these in, with the first two, corrective and collaborative, in green, the third, extractive, in yellow, and the fourth, generative, in red, as a kind of warning stoplight system, right? So the green ones are regarded across the industry as generally safe, and they have been adopted very quickly. The third one, extractive, there's a little more caution around that, and more permission is needed for it. And the fourth, generative, there are actual restrictions around around its use, depending on what one wants to do with the copy that is generated by it. We'll go into more about how these are different and in particular, what kind of editors use each function a little more. So Annie's going to be talking about her specialty, which is in the line editing, copy editing, and copywriting area, in particular with technical writing and the use of AI. And I'll be talking about my area, which is more in the publishing and developmental editing section. So I'm going to pass it off to Andy now, and she's going to give you share her wisdom on this side of things.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. So as Matt mentioned, my day job, I work as a technical writer, and I also do quite a lot of editing, but I also have a background in editing as well. And I'd like to just let you know that the opinions I share today are my own, but I will tell you how I use AI in my day job. Starting with corrective AI, which is probably about 70 to 80% of what I've used up until this point, which is quite a lot. You know, AI is in the news lately as being this big, new, great thing, but what people don't realize is it's been around for a really long time. It's just evolving. And corrective AI, in my opinion, is a new and improved version of spell check, which was more machine learning. So, where spell check focused on identifying and correcting spelling errors based on a built in dictionary, corrective AI goes beyond spelling by detecting and correcting grammar, punctuation, style, and sometimes contextual errors. So spell check is static and relies on a predefined dictionary. And what's really exciting about corrective AI is it continuously learns and adapts to new language patterns, slang, and user-specific writing styles, for better or for worse. But corrective AI can suggest vocabulary based on the context of your writing. It has a small memory. It's kind of a black box how much memory is there, but if you're in the same document, it kind of gets to know your style a little bit. And it can suggest more precise or sophisticated vocabulary based on that. It can understand tone, um, and it can suggest changes to make it more formal or friendly or persuasive, depending on what you tell it. But more importantly, in my job, it can flag terminology. For example, I want to be sure that I'm not using any biased language, or if we've gone through a rebranding, there's a specific way that I refer to my product that I don't want to use. I can actually add that into my AI tool and say, find all of the mentions of this word and come up with a replacement for me. So let's take a look at an example of that. If you'd go to the next slide, Stacy. So here's an example of using Grammarly and spell check. So the blurb on the left is the same content exactly with spell check. And you can see that it's got some misspellings, punctuation, There's an incorrect usage of effect, and it even has a dotted line for passive voice. But using Grammarly, it underlines a lot more things and gives you the reason why in this left or the right-hand panel. So it can flag wordiness, it can flag adverbs that aren't very helpful, like very helpful, like very. It flags terminology and clarity issues, depending on what you want it to say. So for example, I like to write with a readability level somewhere between a 6th and an 8th grade level. And Corrective AI can tell me what my readability score is on that document and suggest ways to make it lower for that. Next slide, please, Stacy. Extractive AI is something that I've been really excited to use at work. So for example, if I get a really long document and I don't have time or the cognitive load in my head to read it, I can ask AI to summarize it for me. I can get the key takeaways. I've been at meetings where I've gotten a generated recap afterwards, but it basically goes through the transcript and extracts the key points. People can do different levels of fact checking, research assistance, and it can organize data from multiple sources. So a common extractive AI is Notebook LM. But I think what everyone's the most excited about these days is generative AI because the natural language processing has really advanced to the point where it can do so many more things than it used to be able to do. So just a few ways in which I've used it is to generate outlines and first drafts of content that I'm creating. I've generated quiz questions for e-learning modules where I've uploaded my content and said, now write me 5 multiple choice questions. I have uploaded images to AI and said, create a sentence of alt text, and had great success with that. But I could also see a way where I could tailor a resume or a cover letter to a specific job description, or I could upload both documents and say, analyze document A and tell me what is on document B that's not showing up on A. I've used it in my volunteer work to write community letters, and I've even heard that it can create logos and other graphics. But in order to get there, you have to tell it what to do. And AI is like a dog, is how I like to say. It really wants to do the right thing. It will do anything for that treat, but you have to be so specific and you have to train it. And so when you're writing an AI prompt, it is so important to make sure that you're giving it the parameters because just like your dog, it can't read your mind and it really needs you to tell it exactly what to do. So here are 5 steps to an AI prompt. First, set the role by telling it a persona to be. You're a technical writer specializing in help content. Define the task. Create a outline for a help topic on a feature. Then specify the parameters. I'd like this document to have 5 different subheadings and have a paragraph on these 5 things. And then set the tone. I'd like this to be conversational and friendly, and then add any constraints. Don't use adverbs. This is going to be translated in many languages, so don't use terms that can mean more than one thing, etc. And then iterate, iterate, iterate until you get it right. So let's take a look at an example. Here's something I did in my volunteer work. I'm a PTA president writing to families with elementary age children. I don't spend time on these letters because no one's going to read them. And then I define the task. Write a letter asking for volunteers. Keep it to 1 paragraph, fewer than 200 words. Again, very specific. Keep the tone conversational. And then I know that we're going to translate this letter into at least 4 different languages using AI. And so avoid complex sentences, jargon, or words that could mean more than one thing for that reason. So let's take a look. Here's something that I did in Copilot. You can see my prompt up in the top right. And it gave me a paragraph and it followed my instructions exactly, but it's a bit bland. It's not really compelling, and that's just part of AI. It does a good job at the first draft, and then to add pizzazz, you'd have to do it yourself. But I think that for that to start, it gave me a really good starting point to go from. Okay, next slide. So you'll see some boxes on this slide. I've been playing with a lot of different generative AI tools, and every single one of them gives me a disclaimer. And this is why human nuance is so important and why editors are so important for everyone using AI. So the top two are from Google. Gemini can make mistakes, so double check it. The other one is in writing in a Gmail. And those eagle eye editors out there will notice that's an incorrect comma because there's not a subject verb pair in the second. So it's not even writing with correct grammar. But human nuance is really important because AI is great at creating plausible content, but not necessarily accurate content. And we call that hallucinations in the biz. But it writes like the average person because it's been trained on billions of pieces of data written by the average person. So it tends to provide generic content. It kind of is a bit bland. It's really, really good at simple, straightforward tasks, but it has a lack of depth, and humans are essential for more complex, high stakes tasks. If, for example, you're writing a self assessment or a resume, it'll give you a really great outline, but you have to be the one that puts in all of the details that really makes that pop. And it would be awkward if then all of a sudden you started misspelling things and using poor grammar, which is why it's important to have a human review for these really high tech or high stakes documents. There's also a security issue. People don't want AI providers to train on their content. Matt will talk about this with fiction writers specifically. And also, some content can't be uploaded to AI for security reasons. If you work for a tech company and you're developing the next new thing and you don't want anyone to know about it, you're not going to upload that and use AI on that. And so a human is going to have to edit that content. And then, of course, there's a huge issue with bias and discrimination. Um, Basically, the data that AI has been trained on contains bias and discrimination, and so it passes it along. And so that's another reason why it's super important to have a human editor review your work. Okay, next slide. So where do editors fit in all of this? Well, quality assurance for one. AI might get there. I don't think it will. I think that we can tell it what to do. It's still going to be bland. Um, we're always going to need an editor to look at the output. I did a project where I created alt text for more than 3,000 images, and it might have done a good job on 7 out of 10, but I was editing most of them. And so the skill of knowing how to work with AI, embracing AI, um, and knowing how to write effective prompts is going to be really highly sought after. And I think that editors are going to be uniquely poised for this. So, quality, as we've always cared about, but also ethical oversight, bias, discrimination, security issues, and then the human nuance, like I've talked about before. Training AI. Now, a lot of them, we don't know exactly what they're trained on. It's kind of a bit of a black box. But in the tool that I use at work, editors are the admins of the tool. We add the terms, we add the style rules. So it's really important to understand different parts of speech and what makes a great sentence in order to be the one to tell the tool what to look for. And then adaptation and innovation. I am really very passionate about accessibility, and I spend a lot of time thinking about alt text and adding alt text to the images in my content. And I feel like writing a sentence of alt text is the very tippy top of the iceberg that AI can help me with. I envision a future where we're going to innovate alt text so that a non sighted user using a keyboard can ask questions of the alt text, can ask questions of the AI to be able to dive deeper into things. And so I think that people that think about content and accessibility and editing as much as this crowd is going to be the ones that takes AI to the next level. And if you have a question, if you're still not sure why editors are needed, I'll show you what happened. Next slide, Stacy. When I asked Copilot to write me or to generate a logo for my now shut down freelance business that I had for 7 years, I said, create a logo for a technical writing and editing business called, and I spelled this right, Andy Tosh Creative Services. And look what it gave me. My name is spelled wrong, services is spelled wrong. Okay, so this is why editors are so very important and are uniquely poised in this really exciting time in tech and writing. Thank you. Oh, I have one more. Okay, so when to use AI and when not to use, that is the question. I love to use AI to check style choices that I sometimes miss. I'm really bad at remembering lay versus lie. One's a transitive verb, one's an intransitive verb. I know that, but I don't know which one. And so I have my AI tools flag that for me. To automate tedious tasks. I did not want to manually write alt text for 3,000 images. It automated that for me and it was amazing. Also, like I said, to get readability suggestions. AI has been giving us readability statistics for years. We don't actually go in and count the number of words in the sentence and then divide it to get our readability score. So we're used to using that, but it also says you can design this differently. You can use this word instead, and it'll make it better for you. And then I love it to do research. When I was writing a letter for the PTA, I said, write me a letter to ask for volunteers and give me reasons why they should volunteer. And AI gave me things that I just wouldn't have thought of. So I love using AI for those things. But don't use AI with sensitive information that shouldn't be shared widely. Never use AI without the author's consent. Don't use AI when human nuance is needed. And don't use AI with creative projects. I mean, you could, but it's not going to be creative. It's going to be quite bland. So these are when it's best to not use AI.
All right, thanks, Andy, so much. So I'm going to be talking about my area of specialty, which is in developmental editing and in publishing. And next slide, please. And so I should have explained here momentarily. Developmental editing is big picture editing. So I'm thinking about how the narrative hangs together as a whole, usually concentrating on big narrative elements, things like character or setting or ideas or structure, things like that. So it's less about punctuation and more about story. Now I'm ready. Okay, and AI fits and starts. So there's a lot of anticipation. The numbers that we saw early on are very big, right? There's a lot of economic anticipation for this, and companies are incorporating the use of AI quite rapidly. The platform that we're using right now, Zoom, has incorporated AI into it. The main program that I use for my editing, Microsoft Word, has AI in it now. So it's in a lot of places, but it's also in a lot of publishing as well. So BuzzFeed was very confident about this. And this is a short timeline because the timeline for these generative AI is quite short as well. But there's a bit of a shift from, say, 2023, when there is a lot of positive anticipation for AI for a news organization like BuzzFeed. A publication like Sports Illustrated then begins using AI for its articles, but is discovered to have produced fake AI-generated writers. Now, this is a curiosity because you'd think, why are you creating an author behind it that is AI generated? Well, there is expectation for that in this kind of writing. And so Sports Illustrated is discovered to have used AI, created AI articles with AI generated writers, and the CEO is fired this was from Arena Group. That was in 2023. Now, going back to BuzzFeed, the CEO is decidedly against AI, saying it is ruining the production here. So there is an adoption, an assessment, a lot of strong opinions from readers, and then a repositioning by the publishers. Next slide, please. And this is all a part of the main difference between the kind of writing that Andy is talking about and the kind of writing I'm talking about is on Andy's side, there is a kind of institutional writing. There's less expectation for there to be an author, right? But when we're talking about publishing in, say, book publishing, we do have an expectation for an author. In this area, you can see the market size is about 30 billion. And imagine the amount of pressure that a $30 billion market is feeling from a market that is on the size of trillions of dollars, right? So there's a lot of pressure on publishing to adopt AI for, in particular, efficiency. Now you'll see the subhead on that first headline is revenues roughly flat on a year-over-year basis. Well, that has been true for more than a year, right? That has been true for almost a decade, if not more, in book publishing in the United States. Again, there's a lot of pressure against book publishing from other areas. You know, we can listen to podcasts, we can watch movies, we can read the internet. So it's been steady. How can publishing businesses in that area then, one that appears to not be growing overly much, actually increase profits? Well, they're looking for efficiencies, right? So then you get companies like Spines in the second headline coming out with an AI, basically an AI company to produce books. They are replacing the editors with AI in this case, and they are using all the functions: corrective, collaborative, extractive, and generative. They are promising to their writers that they're going to get the book to market faster, and they're going to lower the cost for getting it to market. And I believe in this case, they are working primarily with self-publishing writers. So they're going to be essentially a hybrid publisher or book packager. Okay, next slide, please. Another area that has recently cropped up, and you might notice that it is cropping up in many areas in publishing. Now, the book on the left, this is just an example. I was able to discover this through just reading about books, right? There is a new book from Adam Met coming out. I don't know Adam Met, but apparently he's a popular individual, musician, activist. Now, this book on the left is being published by Penguin Random House, I believe. Because that book is being published on the left, there is the book on the right, which is the Adam Met biography. Now, that is by the publisher Global Publishers. You won't find a writer for this book. And this book, as well as others, revealed that these books are entirely AI generated. Essentially, this company is timing the release of their books for the publication of traditionally public books. They're essentially trying to ride the coattails of a human authored book to get attention. It doesn't appear that they inform the reader that these are AI generated, but I have some confidence that they are. Next slide, please. Publishers are developing policy around this, in part because there's a lot of legal action around it, including lawsuits, right? So these companies need to figure out how AI is going to be a part of their business. Well, Taylor and Francis is a major academic publisher. They are highly recommending responsible use. And this touches on many of the things that Andy spoke about in her section. So there needs to be a respect for data security, not sharing sensitive data with AI, for confidentiality on the part of the writer, not sharing something without permission, and as well as copyright protection, one of the main sort of legal protections in the publishing industry. They do, however, allow for certain functions. That idea generation and idea exploration, sometimes called like rubber ducking, right? You're talking to an AI in this case to help develop ideas in the way that programmers use a rubber duck to talk through problems, right? Language improvement is an example of the collaborative AI that we're talking about. So there are some permissions here, including using it for research, which is one of the main areas that I use it in my own work, rather than in the production of copy. Next slide, please. Okay, HarperCollins as an example, and many of these publishers that I'm talking about are examples. A lot of them are doing the same thing. HarperCollins is negotiating pay for their writers for what is their back catalog. So these are books that are largely out of print, and yet they can still generate a little bit of income for the writers of these books. So there is a deal that HarperCollins offers to their writers. If they would like to sell their book to AI companies, they will split the profits with the publisher. So there's a 50-50 split on this $5,000 per title. They also set guardrails on how much of that content can be used or deployed in any by the AI, but they're essentially trying to find a way that their writers can be, their writers and the publishers themselves can be remunerated for the training data, right? And they really need human writing for that training data. Next slide, please. So overall, the publishing industry is adapting to this, and it has had to adapt quite quickly. One of the major ways is that they are throttling. An early story on AI affecting the publishing industry was in the sci-fi magazine Clarkesworld. And Clarkesworld is a famous one that accepts submissions from writers. But they found that upon the release of ChatGPT and its popular adoption, they were suddenly under an avalanche of AI submissions to the point that they had to close their submissions, right? They are unable to filter through so many submissions to discover which of them are human written. So they have had to basically limit the amount of submissions. Well, Amazon is doing something similar, and this is not just affecting individual writers. It's hard to imagine an individual writer submitting 3 books in one day, right? Or more than 3 books in one day. But book packagers do, and hybrid publishers do. And so they're finding that their business is also being curtailed by this. As Amazon tries to adapt to this sudden onslaught. They're also circumscribing the use of it. So Penguin Random House now will be, if you buy one of their new books in paper, you will find on the colophon where they have the ISBN numbers, the title, all the copyright information, that there will be a paragraph, a short paragraph or a line about limiting the use of AI to train on those particular books. So they're trying to protect the books, essentially, unless there is a formal contract. They're formalizing it, so not just Taylor Francis, but all of the big 5 publishers in the US are publishing their policy on AI. Now, when I'm talking about the market writing, they especially do not want AI used in this. So they have to make it clear what they will accept for publication. And they are doing this by presenting their policy usually on their submissions pages. And finally, there are also negotiating with these AI companies. They are establishing how much a writer can earn for selling their book as training data, essentially. Okay, next slide, please. So that means there's a big filter when it comes to market writing. The human authored writing should go through that filter and arrive at the publishers here. The AI generated writing should be filtered out. It should not be a part of that publishing enterprise. If it is a part of that publishing enterprise, then it can't be sold as training data. If AI, generally speaking, as I understand it, will only degrade if it is trained on AI generated writing. So it needs human generated writing in order to be more human. That means that there needs to be a protected kind of grotto, right? Where there is only human generated writing. And that can be assured to the companies that it is human generated and therefore be sold in order to train the AI. So that big filter in the middle, there's a little colander in the middle there, right? That filter is appears in our world on the level of editors, literary agents, contracts, publishers. There are a lot of people who are standing in the position, and that would include authors, who are in the position of filtering out that AI generated content in order that it can be sold to publishers and that can be sold as training data. Next slide, please. Part of the reason that there needs to be this filter is because of the legal battles around this. So AI is not just trained on internet content, it is also trained on published books. And this group of 183,000 books, known as Books 3, was used to train most of the major large language models without the permission of the authors or without any compensation, right? So that has resulted in legal battles. You can see some of the big name authors. There are many more big name authors currently in lawsuits with these major AI companies. They are trying to figure out how much their narratives are worth to these companies for training their LLMs. Next slide, please. So one of the ways that they authors in particular can protect that grotto and make sure that they are able to, if they decide to in the future, sell their narrative as training data, is for them to assure that it is generated by a human. So one response is from the professional association, the Authors Guild. They have recently released the Human Authored Certification. Now, this is currently available for members of the guild. This guild fights for things like royalties for writers and provides legal consultation and the like. And what they're doing is trying to ease that process through the filter by making sure that their writers can assure publishers that they have produce that narrative themselves, that the language that is used in this narrative is human language. Next slide, please. Now, editors are doing this too. On my own website, I have a blog post making clear my relationship with AI, assuring writers that I'm not going to be using AI, their manuscripts as training data. This is an editor here in Washington. I chanced upon this website, but I did find it interesting that this is this is very new. Editors are publishing their AI policy, and depending on what part of the economy that they work in, they need to make sure that they are either using AI to produce and sell institutional writing on the one side, and on the other side, avoiding it so that they can produce human-generated writing, generated writing that can be sold to readers, but also that can be sold as training data. This is one of those other filters. Now, there's a reason for that filter, and this is just one random example that I found online. Someone complaining that they hired an editor on Fiverr, not typically a great place to find professional editors, but a good place to start. But then being disappointed that the writer, or that the editor in this case, pushed the narrative through an AI to generate a review of the manuscript. Now that for me would be entirely unethical, and you could tell that the writer in this case is upset by the matter. This is one of the reasons that we want to avoid doing that, is because for editors, trust is a very important thing to establish with writers, and your reputation is very important. So if something like this were to happen, as an editor, your reputation can be damaged. That AI policy is a good way to avoid this kind of thing. Okay. So how can we use it? Now, if you do have permission to use AI, for example, for generative and extractive purposes, you can do quite a little bit as a developmental editor. So for example, I'm often called upon to describe certain narrative elements or narrative devices or genres. And despite my my education, sometimes I forget, right? Or I don't have the right words for it. So I will find the right words quite quickly by consulting an AI. One of the good things that to combat hallucinations, what Andy brought up earlier, is that now the LLMs are starting to incorporate citations, right? So if I query ChatGPT about free indirect style, it'll provide me with, in this case, probably a good definition of free indirect style, as well as 3 recent examples of it, but will then also cite where it comes from. Now, this is important for me because I want to know that this is real, right? You can also use it to generate comp titles, and this is primarily what I use it for. Comp titles is a comparison title. So this is where if I want to help a writer sell his or her book to a publisher or to a literary agent, we need to be able to describe that book in relation to other already published books. Think of it as a kind of triangulation, right? This book is a little bit like, say, Barbara Kingsolver, and a little bit like Stephen King, right? The large language models are exceptionally good at finding these, especially if you can make your description accurate enough. So here I've got an absurd example. Give me the title and author of 10 recent novels set in the Arctic with hot air balloon pirates and talking dogs. And you would think that is so silly that it could only come from an editor, but no, in fact, it's a description of Thomas Pynchon's novel Against the Day, right? Now, it can provide you a list. Again, it is great at lists, hence the listicle use of it. We can also use it, as Andy mentioned, for contract purposes, the creation of boilerplate. Now, I wouldn't use it for legal legal consultation, but it is a good start. And so I think it is, I include in my contract a section on the use of AI to make sure I am, oh, there we are, make sure that I am transparent with my writer, but also that I have limited liability in that regard. Now, for the extractive one, this would involve basically inputting the manuscript into the AI for analysis. That definitely requires permission from the writer. I typically would not do it, and I don't find any cases to do it for my clients, although I do occasionally do it for my own creative writing. Now, this can actually be quite a powerful tool. A lot of my developmental editing involves first a read through for the reading experience, and then on the second reading, while I'm reading through the manuscript, I am writing notes, extensive notes, and those notes are often in the form of lists. So for example, I will list all the settings in a novel. I will list the named characters in a novel, because for me, I need to understand how they carry through the narrative as a whole. Well, large language models are excellent at that, right? It can give me a list of all the, say, philosophical concepts that are being deployed in a book-length academic narrative. Finally, extractive can also be excellent at summarizing. One of the main strengths of editors, developmental editors in particular, is our ability to summarize things. And in this case, the extractive AI can provide an excellent, say, synopsis of a book-length narrative or develop a query letter for a book-length narrative. And the query letter would be the document you use. It's a sales document. It'd be what you send to a publisher or a literary agent in order to try to sell your book. Okay, next slide, please. And as Andy touched on earlier, we can still use the safe AI, right, for our own writing. So one of the things about developmental editing is that I do a lot of writing. I do very little correction of, say, grammar for the writer, but I still need to correct my own grammar. I still need to make sure that my writing is consistent. So I can use the large language models for collaborative and corrective uses on my own writing. And that can improve the clarity and the conciseness of it, improve the accessibility of it, as well as correcting for grammar, spelling, punctuation, and formatting. I like to tell my editing students that writers take a perverse pleasure in pointing out an editor's errors. It makes sense, you know, we're held to a high standard. Well, this is one way that you can make sure that your own editorial note, for example, doesn't include a lot of errors. Okay, next slide, please. Just to round out my section, my recommendations for editors. That we need to educate ourselves on AI policy in our particular publishing area. If you are in institutional writing, there's going to be less limitations on its use. There will be limitations, but less so than when it comes to market writing. And market writing, there are strong policies on its use. We should have a coherent policy on AI use for our editing, and we should make that transparent to our writers as well. We should teach our writers the rules, laws, and etiquette for AI use. Again, this will differ depending on what market they are approaching. We should teach ourselves, you know, how to use AI effectively. This is a very new tool. You might think of it as a kind of word processor that's new on the scene. Well, editors need to be familiar with it. We should always deploy AI in an ethical manner. That means we are transparent about it, we use it in a limited fashion, and we are consistent in it. We should also maintain confidentiality and security. I would never send a writer's manuscript to someone else without the writer's permission. I would especially not do that if it were then going to be used for training purposes, right? We should avoid AI training on the manuscript unless given permission. That means if we are using AI for analysis, we are given assurance by the AI company that it won't be used as training data. And finally, we need to protect the human experience of reading. So as a developmental editor, I am standing in the spot of the reader. And if I am using AI for extractive purposes, to analyze the document, that might mean I'm not experiencing it in any way that would be familiar to the reader of the book, right? So we need to make sure that that reading experience is still very human. And that's it for my section. I believe that's the last slide there. I'm going to pass it back to Stacy.
Wonderful. Again, thank you, Matt and Andy. A huge round of applause for sharing your insights. Before we jump over to a couple of the questions that we have yet to respond to, I want to encourage everyone to keep learning with us. So first up, as mentioned at the start of this presentation, Andy is the developer and instructor for our new Business Writing Foundations course. This course will start on March 31st. If you are interested in learning the communication techniques to be clear, concise, and to create action in any field, this course would be an excellent learning opportunity for you. In addition to building plain language skills that focus on clarity, consistency, correctness, as well as accessibility and inclusivity, learn how to maximize sorry, AI tools. You'll learn how to maximize AI tools for writing prompt ideation, to polish your writing, and to review and evaluate work that was created. So learn more. Everyone will get a copy of the slide deck. We have a link embedded there, and we hope that you might consider joining us in our first inaugural offering. Next up, if you're already skilled at business writing, you may want to consider our reports, proposals, and documents course as a way to advance your professional skill set. We also have a number of other writing courses offered through professional and continuing education, all taught by outstanding industry leaders. They're worth checking out if you are interested. Then I want to highlight Matt's specialization in developmental editing. If you are looking to expand your editorial skill set and services, especially if you are already working broadly with narrative, this intensive 12-week course is designed to give you the skills necessary to do the work of a developmental editor, to use appropriate tools, strategies, and walk away with artifacts that can help you jumpstart or advance your career. This includes manuscript design, story structure, business development, evaluation and consultation strategies, coaching, and other key relationship considerations when working with an author. The next course offering of the developmental editing specialization starts also on March 31st. And then I wanted to do a final highlight here, last but certainly not least, the incredible and well-regarded editing certificate program that both Andy and Matt teach in. This program is a great opportunity for anybody interested in diving into the world of editing. This program is offered quarterly, so if you're interested, please join myself, likely Andy and Matt as well, as at one of our future information sessions. Um, and then again, thank you. Keep learning with us. We have ways to stay connected when you get the slide deck. I'm going to go to our last slide here. Ooh, we've had a bunch of questions here at the end. Um, Again, and my most esteemed thank you to my colleagues, Matt and Andy, for not only their caliber of excellence in their teaching, for being so incredible at doing that wisdom share, but again, for their professional collegiality, for always being support of the amazing learning opportunities that we're able to provide to students out there to truly make impact in the world. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Andy and Matt. You two are incredible. Okay, I want to jump to some of our questions. I know we're getting close to time. I'm going to go in order that they were received in an effort to try and get through all of them. Our first
Okay.
question, oh, sorry.
I was trying to get them in the chat, and so I don't know if you're going to start with the raised
Oh,
hands
no,
or
no,
something.
I'm only going to go with open ones. Thank you. No worries,
Yeah,
Andy.
some that I
Uh,
needed Matt to weigh in on, so I didn't get to all of them. So I wasn't ignoring you, everyone. It's just
yeah,
that I work for a corporation and they tell me to use AI, so I couldn't answer all of the questions, whereas Matt can. So I answered the ones I could.
thank you, Andy. Um, yeah, and we've had a number of great questions. It looks like we have 24 and half of them have been answered. So our first question here came from earlier on in the presentation, and it's, do you find most clients receptive to AI being used to edit their document, even if you are applying your own set of human eyes?
Yeah, so thanks for that question. And I could see in this case, my response would be different from Andy's response. This is the kind of cultural divide, right? I'm working with market writing where there's an expectation for there to be an author, and Andy's working with more institutional writing where the author is not generally considered an important feature. So my clients tend not to be receptive to AI use. In fact, in the last year, I have started to get writers when they approach me for editing services, making clear in the initial email that they don't want me to use AI. And that's a very new thing, right? One of the reasons that I have a policy on my website is because of this. I want to make sure that when it comes to market writing, I'm making a very transparent, I'm taking a transparent position vis-a-vis AI and not using it, especially if the writer doesn't want me to. I do use it, like I said, mostly for research purposes when it comes to, say, helping a writer try to get their book to market. I believe that answers most of that question.
Okay,
Did you
good.
want
So
to add
I,
anything to
I
that,
just wanted to
Andy?
make sure because you touched on transparency clause telling your clients what AI you're using. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Our next question is when editors claim they do not use AI, does that include Microsoft Word, Perfectit, etc.?
And so my understanding is that Perfected does not use AI, and the article that I mentioned at the beginning with the corrective, collaborative, extractive, and generative forms of AI is in part because of an article published by, I believe his name is Daniel Human, who the owner and CEO of Perfected. The reason why I think Perfected took a stand against it was because they wanted to assure confidentiality and security. So in my understanding, Perfected doesn't use AI. Now, Microsoft Word can if you have Copilot, but you can use Microsoft Word without Copilot, which is predominantly, well, that's entirely how I use it. So for those two, you're not necessarily using AI. You're probably more likely using a spell checker.
That said, when I was freelancing, so this was 3 years ago, I haven't freelanced for 3 years. When I was freelancing, when I used Perfectit, because I have a Mac, Perfectit was in the cloud. And I was so worried about that because it wasn't local on my machine that I made sure to give a disclaimer to my writers because of it had to be uploaded into the cloud for Mac. So I would keep
Yes.
that in mind. A PC is different.
Yes, absolutely. In any kind of transmission of the manuscript like that, it's important that we're transparent about it as editors. But according to Perfectit, they would then scrub it from their servers, so they don't retain it for analysis or anything like that. That's my understanding anyway. Should I go to the next one?
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
Yeah, I've seen lots of examples of incorrect AI-generated citations. Do you check every citation AI provides you? If I'm making an argument and I want to make sure it's sound, absolutely. Andy, you want to add to that?
Did I check every line of more than 3,000 images of alt text? Absolutely. I am more important than AI and I am smarter than AI. And I use it as a time saver to review instead of write. But yes, they all need to be checked.
Good answer, good answer.
And our next question is, why would an author allow the use of AI for developmental editing when they themselves can use these tools?
Yeah, good question. And this is part of the reason why I don't use it. When I talked about protecting the human experience of reading, I am being hired specifically to stand in the place of the reader, and certainly you can use AI to perform very elaborate analysis of a manuscript. What that will give you is uncertain whether or not it will improve it for a reader. The other reason, beyond it being beyond that, is that editors, by and large, are going to have a high level of familiarity, pardon me, familiarity with the various narrative elements, narrative strategies, genres, and if you're going to be selling it to the market, they're going to have a little bit of understanding of the market history for it. You're less likely to get that from AI. I think a human reader is still essential for getting that. I think I came up with an ornate phrase where it's a virtual limbic analysis, right? You're getting the emotional response of an actual human editor, which is going to tell you a lot about the viability of a narrative.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here real quick because I recognize we're 1 minute past 6 and I want to be really respectful of Andy and Matt's time. I can do my best to respond to the other questions, but I wanted to say both of you again, thank you so much. I don't want you to feel like you need to stay around. I know that you have lots of other competing priorities in your life. And just again, thank you for being here. But maybe really quickly before, if either of you can stick around, that's great. If not, that's
Yes.
fine. But I do want while I have Matt here to jump ahead real quick to a question here about, because I think this is a great opportunity. One, to pitch the business writing course because it'll be incredible. And we're so excited to launch this in spring. And we hope to see so many of you in that course. But this is for developmental editing. It's a question about whether it's focused on fiction or nonfiction. And I think this is a nice opportunity just to explain the broad genres that are included in that real quick.
Yeah, could you tell me the name of the question?
Yes, it's from Mary Ann.
Mary Ann, let me scroll down.
It's about
Okay.
midway down in the, yeah.
Is the developmental editing course mostly focused on fiction or nonfiction? It covers both and more. The idea was to cover that editors. It helps to be versatile. I also do copy editing as well, but it's not just the services that I have some flexibility in. It's also the genres, right? So the course itself touches on 5 major genres. We do short genres that includes articles and pitches. We do longer forms that includes fiction writing, nonfiction writing, academic writing, and finally corporate communications. And those are some of the larger areas. There's more for developmental editors out there, but we touch on each of those as part of a sequence in which we build up towards, say, from a small thing, but a necessary part of the publication process, which is the query letter, to something that is more and the query letter is for fiction books, for novels, to the much larger genre, which is a book proposal, and that is used to sell nonfiction books, such as memoirs and the like. So we build up incrementally while passing through different genres. So yes, we cover both.
Thank you, Matt. I
Yes.
knew I'd get a good answer for that one. I'm going to jump around again real quick because I want to address a question I've seen come up several times. It's in regard to getting the slide deck. Yes, everyone that RSVP to attend this event will get a copy of the slide deck, as well as access to the recording, which will be properly captioned. So that won't happen tomorrow, but we do expect to be able to send that out in just the next couple of days. So thank you everyone for asking that. It's so cool, cool, wonderful, exciting to see the interest. But yes, everyone will get a copy that includes both the slides and the recording. So hopefully that'll help answer those ones. I wanted to also jump to if either of you have experience with Perfectit's new AI tool, Draftsmith. No, not yet. Okay,
Not yet, no,
good question. Next presentation.
definitely.
There we go. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna jump back up to the top now. We had another Perfectit question. if we can do that one real quick before jumping to Francesca's. So it's just a question about Perfectit. Should the editor get approval to use it?
I think if you're transmitting the document, I think it's important to make that clear to the writer. Even if Perfectit assures that when you're done using their services, it is deleted from their servers. Any case where it's being sent to a third party, I think it should be clear to the writer.
Okay, so now we're going to skip back up to Francesca's question. So she's noting a wide variety of opinions on using AI for translation. Some of these examples include a translator friend saying AI for translation is a common starting point and that publishers use it. Another opinion is a copyright lawyer states that using AI for translating is perfectly acceptable. And then a third example here where a literary publisher friend recommended not to disclose having used AI because readers have a strong bias against it. Have you heard anything about using AI for literary translations? Or what are your thoughts?
For literary translations, I'm less familiar with that, in part because a good literary translator it has a kind of reputation on the same level as a good author. For other forms of translation, however, I think it is becoming quite a bit more common, and I've seen AI translation being adopted quite quickly outside of, say, market writing. In the same way that, say, I recently discovered AI um, voice narration, right? This is another area where AI is sort of pushing its way into the industry. I think they can be viable for the translations. They can sound somewhat human. I think we're going to continue to see very different cultural opinions vis-a-vis AI. So there are going to be those who don't want anything to do with it, and those who say it's harmless and they don't mind. I listened to an audiobook that was only after I had listened to it did I discover that the voice narrator was AI, right? That's impressive to listen to 2 hours of narration and not realize it's not a human talking. That's quite impressive, and that's an area where, say, this company can now sell their services for voice narration and undercut the market by, in this case, 75%, right? They can sell voice narration services for a quarter of the cost.
Mm.
I
I
don't
think that
have
answered the question.
And
and I have any thoughts on that. The writing that I do in corporate, I'm a technical writer. It's not creative, and it's not. I mean, sure, I wrote it, but I don't have any ego around it. I don't think of it as my property. I'm doing it for my job, and it's I'm not like super like egotistical about it. So I assume people are using AI to translate it, and more power to them. Anything that can make their day go smoother.
good insights. Thank you both. I'm going to jump back to the question about the slide deck and this recording. This recording is still going. So everything that we're doing right now will be shared. So thank you again for the question. Um, okay, I want to jump back up to the top here. We have a note of appreciation to you both. Just a note saying that thank you so much for speaking about this. We know AI isn't going away soon and we need to learn how to live with it, work with it, use it. I've noticed there's a growing negative sentiment amongst some editor circles about AI overall, when it's such a complex tool that can be helpful. What are your thoughts on increasing demand for editors to edit AI-generated content?
Do you want to start with that one, Andy?
Yeah, I love editors. They're my favorite people in the world. But my favorite story about editors is when I was at the ACES American Copy Editors Society conference in 2016, and AP announced they were going to start lowercasing internet, and the pearl clutching that happened, and the panic because how dare we lowercase this word? I love, love, love editors, but sometimes we are reluctant to get on the bus and move forward. So that's my first thought about that. Um, we're necessary. We're going to be needed, or else the whole world is going to turn bland. I very truly believe that. Without editors to make things colorful, it's just if everything's AI generated, it's like the Stepford Wives, and I just don't want to live in that world. So I think we're important, and I think having our voice demand that we're part of this is so very important. I also want to say, to answer Gina's second question about whether human editors might be able to improve the bias, no. And I'll tell you why. And the answer is because I can't keep up with bias. I am continually learning on how to write more inclusively. And the world is evolving and language evolves. What I don't want is for language to evolve based on the blandest content on the internet and have our language evolve based on that. I want it to evolve based on real human experiences and creativity and color and spark. And so we are very important to this process. And that's what I wanted to say.
Wonderful, thanks, Andy. And
Maybe we just
on
end
that
now.
note, yeah, on yeah, on I agree. This is, I think one of the things that draws editors to editing is this belief in, the power of language and the human imagination and the beauty of expressiveness. I personally choose not to edit AI content, but that's because I'm more concerned about market writing. So the writers who are submitting work to me, they've been working on a novel for, say, a decade, or they've been writing their life story. And I am far more interested in working with someone who wants to tell, some speak from their soul about their experiences than I am in someone who just wants to make a buck selling an AI generated book. I want my work to be interesting. So yeah.
Thank you both. And then we have a question here about using ProWriting's Aid, the manuscript analysis feature. Do either of you have any experience or thoughts on that tool?
Haven't
No.
used it yet. Sorry.
Okay,
No.
this is great for our next time we do this. Okay.
Yeah.
And then for our final question, if I want to share a whole manuscript with AI to have it prepare a synopsis, how do I specify that I don't want it to be used for the purpose of training the AI tool?
I think that would be in understanding the large language model and your contract, your subscription to it, more than anything else. You can't, for example, upload an entire book for any kind of free AI model, right? They have word limits on it. If you pay for a more upgraded version, you will have a better idea of whether or not that whatever you input is being used for training data. I suspect that some of them will give you guarantees that it won't be used. But whether you're going to have to find that in basically the contract that you sign with them. Does that make sense, Andy? I don't know. You can answer that.
I've never used it. There's so many, I can't keep an exhaustive list. I've used probably 20, but that's not one of them. There is a question that I kind of answered before, so it got dismissed from the box that I wonder, Matt, if you had any thoughts on. And that is, how should we approach potential concerns about the energy demands and environmental impacts of AI? I don't have an answer to it. I think about it, I stress about it, just like everything else in the world. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm the kind of environmentalist who doesn't own a car, so I think it's a big concern. That said, my concerns are largely more about the ethics of sharing the thing or the security of it and really protecting the experience of it. I do think that's something that should be kept in mind, but because my use of it is really quite curtailed, I don't think it's having much of an impact on my side.
Thank you. Sorry to throw that at you, but it's something that I
No.
couldn't answer. And then I said it was done, but it wasn't really answered, so I just wanted to bring it.
It's an important topic for sure.
Okay, we've gotten to all the questions. We've got about half of our group with us still, so I just want to again say thank you, Andy and Matt. I am committed to finding a way to bring this topic back in the next couple of months as things change, and maybe we will have more insights on some of the things we weren't able to address today. But I do want to encourage all of our participants, if you're interested in learning more about what we have to offer, check out our website, connect with our enrollment coaches. We're grateful that you're here with us tonight to continue your learning, that you've thought of us for this learning, and we hope to be able to serve you as you continue your learning.